everybody. Happy day 17 of the Advent calendar. 1 week today until Christmas. And welcome to the very last news agenda of the year with me, a very festive this morning, tinselled Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined by the Mirror's assistant editor, Jason Beattie, who doesn't own a Christmas jumper, but does have a Christmas tree in the background. Morning, Jason.
And a Santa. I've got a Santa.
And you've got a Santa.
I'm not a complete Grinch. I'm half.
Just being dressed in green doesn't make you a Grinch, I'm sure. Right, this is the People's Paper Review, so get into the comments, ask us your questions. We'll do our best to give you the answers. We will be having a topical quiz later on in the show, so take part in that. Drop your answers in the comments then too, and give us your answers for once. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Those of you listening later on podcast will just have to shout at the sky for a change. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on the announcement by Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall yesterday not to compensate women left out of pocket by the change in the state pension age. Unfortunately for her and Keir Starmer, both were quite strong in their support for paying that compensation when they were in opposition, and it was the Tories who'd have to find the money. Jason, can you take us through this a bit? Why are these women owed money, and what are we not doing about it?
So, the coalition government, do you remember them?
Years back,
in the 2010s, yeah, remember them? They decided unilaterally, without any notice whatsoever, or minimal notice, yeah, to align the women's state pension age with the men's state pension age, yeah. As a result, an estimated 3+ million women all lost out in terms of the amount they're going to receive from a final pension. Lots of them been left because they'd done financial planning quite badly off. They became known as the Waspi women. They're incredible campaigners. They have tried to get this injustice corrected. There you go. You can see Liz Kendall there.
Yeah, Liz Kendall with a parliamentary event holding a placard with a Waspi woman saying, "I will work with Waspi to identify and deliver a fair solution for all women affected. I call on the government to work with them to work urgently with the Waspi women."
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So they took their case to the government ombudsman, who ruled that they had been unfairly treated and they deserved compensation, roughly, depending on their circumstances, between kind of £1,000 and £3,000 each, which wasn't a massive amount, but it was something, and it was a ruling which the government was forced to abide by. This all came under the Conservatives. Yeah. In fact, it came about 6 months before the election, if I remember correctly.
What a surprise! Just a bit like infected blood compensation, post office.
So the Conservatives then obviously just sat on their hands because they didn't want to spend the money before the election because they wanted to use what money they did have for tax cuts, bribes, whatever you wish to call it. This lands on Labour's table, as you say, with the compensation for the infected blood scandal, with the compensation for Post Office Horizon scandal, with the compensation for the LGBT veterans in the armed forces who've been unfairly treated. So you can see these bills are mounting up. The problem for the government, and it would have cost about 10 billion to compensate the Waspi women. The problem for the government is before they came into power, as you said, they made very, very sympathetic noises to the Waspi women. You know, Keir Starmer on record saying this is an injustice, as we've seen the Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall saying, "I stand with Waspi women." So, although this is a Tory problem created by the Tories and should have been resolved by the Tories, Labour's made a bit of a Horlicks of it.
Yeah, they should really be dumping it on the Tories somehow. You'd have thought if their messaging was any good at this point, they'd have to say, look, the Tories have left us with, I don't know, a problem with the money. They've left us with all this compensation to pay. We can't afford to do all of them. It's going to have to wait a bit. I'm afraid you're the ones that are waiting a bit, or something. There may be some better way of managing the messaging here, but it's pretty bad. And it does make me wonder quite how we're going to sit when it comes to the nuclear veterans as well in the years to come, when we have to talk about maybe 5 billion or more compensation for them. And, you know, Labour have stood with us in opposition, been very vocal, and we thought that was sort of nailed on. Once you get a politician to make a good solid public commitment, apparently doesn't work that way with this government. So it's a small amount per person, isn't it? But it turns into a lot because there's so many women who are affected.
And as there was a report out recently saying that since this rule change was made, about 300,000 women have died. So, but some have sadly got to their graves without seeing any compensation at all.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a lesson to be learned from this, it's that in opposition, be very careful about what you make promises about. Yeah. If there's a kind of you can say anything to try and get elected, but it can come back to haunt you. The problem for the government is it's beginning to get a reputation for looking a little bit shifty, whether unfairly or fairly.
So going back on what it said.
Yeah, I mean, you can see they kind of keep using very carefully constructed language. As kind of, Rachel Reeves was saying, there'll be no rise in national insurance. Then you actually find, well, actually, she didn't mean that for employers. So there is rise in national insurance for employers. It's this sort of kind of idea that they said one thing in opposition and are acting completely different in government. I mean, and as you say, that the messaging here is not particularly good. This is fundamentally a conservative problem. The Conservatives completely and utterly dodged the bullet, went out of their way to avoid clearing up a mess which they had created, and yet it's Labour's getting the kicking.
Yeah. Now, Steve, who is the son of a nuclear veteran, says it's easy to make promises when in opposition. They're now failing to back up those promises. Talk is cheap, money buys beer. I think probably we're looking at a government that is perhaps, how can I put it, has a tendency towards caution, and at the same time is run by a lawyer. And they do tend to pick their words very carefully and find little ways to wriggle through things.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to Starmer on this one, it was a Labour 2019 manifesto commitment. It wasn't a Labour 2024 manifesto commitment.
Yeah, the public rejected the 2019 manifesto.
Yeah, so he could say, look, we didn't go into the election promising this. It wasn't in our manifesto.
But he did sign a statement, I think, in 2022, saying he would support them. Liz Kendall's had that picture taken fairly recently, I think.
Yeah.
Pauline says he's a very sly man. In the run-up to the election, I mean, what do you think, everybody? Do you think this is the right thing for the Labour government to have done? Do you think that they should have found the money somehow? Do you think Keir Starmer's coming off looking badly about all this? Because this is how people are, in the run-up to the election, we had someone who was honest running against the deceitful, sleazy, partying, law-breaking Tories. And now it seems like that is not what we got. It seems like we have someone who is actually going to change his mind quite a lot. And he's come out yesterday saying we just don't have the money for all this. I suppose he's trying to be honest about it. But, I mean, what could he do?
Or there's an alternative way of looking at this, going, he's now being hit by the hard realities of government. And you suddenly get there and you're presented with this ever-lengthening list of demands for expenditure, whether it's justified or not. And I'm personally, in this case, I think it probably is justified. But you've got to balance that with a country which is up in arms because they have to pay any more tax whatsoever. So, impose inheritance tax on wealthy landowners and they take to the streets. And then they say, at the same time, we want you to spend £10 billion compensating the Waspi women for a mistake made by your predecessors. I mean, it's not easy being in government. You can't win. But they just made their job harder by raising expectations before they got into power about what they could and couldn't do.
Yeah, but at the same time, when they were running for power, they said so little about what they were going to do that they were criticised for not saying enough. So the one or two things they did talk about, and there's the stuff that they're not sticking to.
Yeah.
Wes says, everyone knows the rise in pension age is an utter disgrace. Only people counting the coffers can't see the reality. We do have an ageing population. There is a very pragmatic argument for having to raise the pension age. But the fact is, I think what the Waspi women are complaining about is that there just wasn't any transition arrangements put in place. There was no sort of shelving to get to that point, which would have been fair to do at the start. Of course, austerity under the coalition government meant that was just not a go at the time. Gillian says, excuse me. Gillian says, we have no money apparently, yet we can give millions away. it's one of those things. This is, of course, I think it's about the third attack on pensioners, it's being called. So we've had the first was taking away the winter fuel payment, some of which, of course, these Waspi women will also have been affected by. The second, you've got those pensioners who still owned their farms and had done inheritance tax planning and everything for their families and thinking that was going to be okay, and now suddenly it isn't. The third is these women left struggling to get by because their savings didn't bridge the gap between when they retired and when they got to state pension age. I know that we could pick holes in all those so-called attacks on pensioners, especially the farming one. But this is a political choice, isn't it, really? He's had to pay out the post office because the country at large was furious about that. He's had to pay out infected blood because it's been going on so long. There's no way out of it. And it was absolutely huge. But he's chosen not to pay the women who probably weren't going to vote for him anyway, I suppose. The idea that pensioners...
Actually, the thing about Waspi women is actually a lot of them were Labour supporters. It was
well, not anymore. Not today.
Yeah, I mean, it was... You know, these were people. Most of them were not very well off. They were. I think we're not like talking about wealthy landowners here. I think it's very different.
Yeah.
But we come back to the same question. You know, if you want to pay the people compensation they deserve, you've got to raise that money from somewhere. And at the moment, people, as I say, are demanding that the compensation is paid, but also up in arms every time they raise taxes. You can't win.
No, you've got to have it come from somewhere. Pensions is an absolutely massive bill. And like I say, if you've got more and more older people, although many Waspi women have sadly died, there are probably more Waspi women than the coalition government were expecting to still be here at this time. Tanya says, well, that's what they do on the campaign trail. They lie to people to get the votes, and once in office, they backpedal and do the opposite. But this is the thing, isn't it? This is what people thought when they voted for a Labour government this time, that this is not what they were getting. So you've got this idea that there is a finite amount of money, but there's also a finite amount of justice now. That there either is justice or there isn't. No, there either is the truth or there isn't. There is fairness or there isn't fairness. And the idea that some people will get it and others don't because there isn't enough justice to go round, there isn't enough fairness for everyone to have a fair crack at it. That doesn't seem like a very Labour idea. However you vote, that's not what anyone expected.
I forgot the name of a previous commentator. I mean, I think she's actually going to hit on the biggest problem of all, which is there's a massive disillusionment with the political parties and political system. And you know, Starmer was kind of meant to be the antidote to that. He was meant to be the person who could, you know, under-promised and over-delivered. He was meant to be the person who came into office and said, look, I understand why you're frustrated. And now he's as tainted by it as all the others. And it's because of this general sense of disillusionment, this idea that they're all the same, that they say anything just to get elected and they're therefore cynical about it, or is a reason why we're getting to the rise of extreme parties. And if there's a kind of a big picture takeaway from the Waspi decision, it's that. It's, you know, all the same. We voted for change. We've got, nothing has changed.
Yeah, exactly. And then it gets people more frustrated and they go to the extremes to kind of vent that frustration. And then Nigel Farage is Prime Minister, and whatever you think about Nigel Farage, he has no experience of running anything.
Well, I mean, he's a kind of, you know, he makes more promises than anybody else. I mean, don't expect it's going to be better. He just does it in a more plausible way.
Well, we've been there before, haven't we? On Twitter, Kevin says, Labour is fast building up a profile of not being trusted by those who voted for them. If they knew how hard Brexit means little room for manoeuvres, maybe we need a softer Brexit, like May's deal at least. Lee says, ask how many people would like another tax increase to pay for this, is your point, Jason. Jake says, pretty sure it was the Tories and Lib Dems that betrayed the Waspi women. Why don't they have a class action lawsuit against the two parties that actually did this? I don't think you can bring a class action against the political party. Otherwise, they would have been sued out of existence some time ago. So, I mean, the question is, though, what Lee's asking here is, what's next for the Waspi women? They had an ombudsman, the parliamentary ombudsman's found in their favour, but a court case has found against them, which is what's given the the government this wriggle room. So where do they go now? I suppose they could crowdfund and go back to court, but they'd have to make a whole different argument to do that, wouldn't they? And it would take years, and more of them would be dead, of course.
Yeah.
I suppose, is that what their government's doing, kind of challenging them? So if you want it, you're going to have to sue us.
I don't know. I think they'll just keep campaigning. There's a lot of anger on backbenchers here. I mean, Labour backbenchers particularly on this. So let's see. I mean, they've been incredibly kind of determined campaigners up to now. I have a lot of respect for the way they run this campaign as well. So let's see where it goes. They don't look to me having kind of met a few of them like people are just going to go, oh, let's give up now.
No, grandmas generally don't do that.
Yeah.
People who aren't grandmas but are the age of grandmas generally just don't do that. They're pretty strong-willed people. So, all right, let us know if there's any more you want to say about Waspy Women, everyone. If you want to get in the comments, we're going to go to our quiz now, the main event of the show. It's that time of year where there's very little news, but unless you're Prince Andrew, so we thought we'd have our own little roundup and do a festive quiz. It's hopefully not too punishingly hard or ridiculously easy. I want you watching to get in the comments. Let us know your answers as well. Let's see how well you've all been paying attention over the past year. So, Jason, are you ready?
I'm very excited.
Okay. Which Chancellor, question 1, which Chancellor raised taxes the most? Was it A, Rachel Reeves, B, Rishi Sunak, C, William Pitt, or D, Norman Lamont? 1993, I think he was Major's Chancellor. Might have been Maggie's, actually. What do you think, everybody? Get in the comments which it was. Rachel Reeves, Rishi Sunak, William Pitt in the 19th century, or Norman Lamont back around Black Tuesday time.
God.
Steve reckons it's Rishi.
Yeah.
Wrong, Steve. I've got one answer out for you, Jason. Come on, which is good? Rachel, Rishi, William.
Do you want me to guess?
Do you have a guess?
Well, by a process of elimination, I don't think it's Pitt. Although he introduced income tax, he didn't actually raise masses from it. So, and I don't think it's Rachel Reeves because he actually hasn't raised taxes very much at all on the big scale of things. So I think it's Lamont.
You're correct. It is Norman Lamont. 1993, his budget was slightly larger than Reeves in the amount of tax raised relative to the size of the economy at the time. But Rachel is the second. The chances to raise the tax is second most in terms of the size of the economy. Right, a slight journalism question now. Who was the first Western journalist to interview Vladimir Putin this year? Was it A, Piers Morgan, formerly of this parish, B, Nigel Farage, first primary job, C, Tucker Carlson of Fox News, or Steve Rosenberg of the BBC? You're going to have a guess, Jace.
Oh, well, I mean,
Piers,
I don't remember Piers. I don't remember Piers interviewing him. I don't recall Farage interviewing him. So it's either going to be Tucker or Steve Rosenberg. And I don't think Putin likes talking to Steve Rosenberg. So I think it must be Tucker Carlson.
It was Tucker Carlson of Fox News in February. Steve Rosenberg did it in October. So he did get to him, although Putin was a lot crosser with Steve than he was with Tucker, has got to be said. Yeah. So in April, there was a landmark climate justice case in which the European Court of Human Rights ruled that countries must do more to protect their citizens from climate change. Now, those of you watching, which country do you think they told off in Europe? I'm not going to give you multiple choice. Any European country, which country did they tell off for not doing enough on climate change? Get into the comments and let us know. Jason, have you got any ideas?
No. Was good about
not 27. Where's things? It's Portugal.
27 countries in Europe.
Richard says Belgium. I mean, we could just name all the European countries.
I think it's going to be. Is it going to be Germany?
It's not Germany, but you're very close. It was Switzerland. Portugal was a very good guess because it hinged on heat waves, and there were a group of older women in Switzerland, had the average age of 74. Waspy women, again, grandmas, right? They successfully argued that they're more prone to death due to extreme heat waves, and their government wasn't doing enough to look after them, which should mean that every government in Europe and banned by the ECHR has to do more about extreme heat waves. Nothing's happened so far. But anyway, we'll see, won't we? So this is one for you, Jason. Mm-hmm. Which country had the longest general election this year? Was it A, Iceland, B, the USA, C, Russia, or D, India?
India.
Correct. It was India. It lasted for 44 days. It felt like hours was longer than that, but apparently
it's a big country.
It's a big country, and they, I don't know how long their campaigning went on for. I think our campaign.
It has the world's largest population. They need time to count.
Yeah, but Russia's got a huge area to cover, but they lasted quite a long time, Russia. But frankly, the result was nailed on anyway, wasn't it? Literally nailed on in some cases. So, who caused a row this year in the UK when she was treated like a queen while making a swift exit? Anyone in the comments, let me know. Who caused a row when she was treated like a queen while making a swift exit? And let's be honest, I think the people watching this are probably more likely to get it than Jason is.
I think there's a clue in swift exit, isn't there?
Oh, damn. Damn. Yes, it was Taylor Swift. She got given a police escort for her Eras tour gigs by the new Labour government in August. Well done, Steve. You've got Taylor Swift. After a terror threat in Germany threatened to call off the UK gigs. And because she made £1 billion for the UK economy and donates to all those food banks as well, the police found a reason to make sure those concerts could go ahead. It was not helped by the fact the Home Secretary was later seen partying at a Taylor Swift gig. Right, this is one that's a bit more difficult, I suppose. Which year saw the highest number of Channel migrants crossing to our shores from France in small boats? Was it A, 2022, B, 2023, C, 2024, or D, 1066?
I think I know the answer, Susie.
What is it?
I think it's 2022.
The highest, Richard reckons it's 2023. I'm afraid you're wrong, Richard, and Jason's managed to score this one. It's not 2025. Well, we haven't got there yet, Steve. Give us a chance. The highest number of people to cross the Channel in a year was in 2022 when 45,755. This year, it's 33,000 and a bit. Last year, it was 29,000 and a bit. 1066, I'm afraid, was about 6,000. But they did all have swords and horses, and they definitely had malicious intent. So slightly different situation. Right, okay, coming up to the end now. Which countries did the UK launch missiles at this year? Was it Yemen, Iraq, Syria, or Russia? Yemen, Iraq, Syria, or Russia?
I think it was the Houthis in Yemen.
Any others? You think it was Yemen? Lady Sophie reckons it's Russia. I'm afraid, Richard says Yemen. I'm afraid it was a trick question, everybody. Not the Isle of Man, Steve. You're plainly on the eggnog quite early, aren't you? No, it was Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. We did not fire at Russia. Ukraine fired on Russia with our missiles. Slightly different situation. How many members of the royal family announced they had cancer this year? I'm not going to give you any options. How many do you think it was? We all know one or two. How many in total members of the royal family do we think had cancer? Sophie reckons it's 2. What do you reckon, Jason? Wes says 3.
I can't remember when Fergie announced that she had cancer. So whether it was this year or last year. So we had definitely had the king. Twice. We definitely had the king, and we definitely had Kate. So I'm kind of going for 3.
3 is right. You and Wes have got it. Jay Sutcliffe said 4. No, Jay, not 4. It was Kate, Charles, and Fergie. But the Queen had also died with blood cancer the previous year. It was revealed this year. So, but Fergie, it was her second bout of cancer. She had breast cancer previously, and this time it was melanoma, I think. So anyway, I don't know if we still count Fergie as part of the royal family, but Andrew does. He hasn't got many others, so we'll count her. How many prisoners did the new Labour government release from jail to save overcrowding? Was it A, 3,100? Was it B, 13,100? Or C, 31,100? Small, medium, or large, basically. What do we think, everybody? There was an awful lot of coverage about it. 3,000, 13,000, or 30-odd thousand? What do you reckon it was? Jason, what does Santa think?
Santa thinks it's A.
It's 3,100. Santa's right, correct, but it is a growing number. 13,000, Jay. No, far too optimistic. You'd be reading the Daily Mail. And meanwhile, 177 people jailed over the riots. So the whole idea of the 3,000 going out because of the space to put people in for the riots is not really going. Who got the big? This is one for political wonks out there. Who got the biggest parliamentary majority in British history? Was it Clement Attlee, Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer, or Stanley Baldwin? Stanley Baldwin, everybody, is not an old music hall comic. He was a prime minister in the 1920s. Clement Attlee was post-war. Boris Johnson was a lifetime ago, but worryingly recent.
Baldwin was so anonymous, he could get the train home to Worcester every weekend and nobody ever knew who he was. He never got recognised.
Richard reckons it was Stanley Baldwin. What do you reckon, Jason?
I think it's the national government.
Jay says Attlee, the national government. So you think it's Attlee, do you?
No, I think it's Baldwin.
Oh, you think it's Baldwin? Sorry. Steve also thinks it's Attlee. No, Clement Attlee got 145. Boris Johnson got 80. Keir Starmer's on 174. But Baldwin, who was a Tory in 1924, got 209 seats, more than the opposition. There he is. You wouldn't have spotted him on a train, to be fair. But despite having had such a massive majority of 209, they only lasted 5 years and they still got kicked to the curb next time round. So a lesson there perhaps for Keir Starmer. Big majorities don't necessarily help. Now, last question. Which poisonous creature made its way to the UK for the first time this year? Was it A? Thank you, Adam. I am looking festive. Was it A, Elon Musk? Was it B, JD Vance? C, a delegation from the Taliban? Or D, a toxic centipede? What do you reckon, everybody in the comments? This is the last question. Centipede, Taliban, Trump's best mate, or Elon Musk? What's Santa saying, Jason?
Santa thinks it's a centipede.
Why does Santa think it's a centipede?
I don't know.
Just because it's silly.
Yeah.
Well, C says it's Keir Starmer. That's not very nice. He's been here for a while. Sutcliffe reckons it's the delegation for Taliban. No, they went to COP29, the Taliban. Richard also says centipede. All right, we're going to call an end to this, and so does Steve. It is the centipede. It's a toxic centipede called Scutigera coleoptratra, I think. It's commonly known as the house centipede. It was found at the home of University of Leicester academic Dr. Richard Jones, who spotted it in his downstairs bog. Its bite is non-fatal to humans. It's described as being like a bee sting, but it does eat spiders. So that's quite handy. Right. Thank you, Jason, for getting through that. I think you did quite well.
Santa enjoyed that.
I didn't actually count your scores, but you did pretty highly. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking part. I hope you all scored well as well. Now, we have managed to find one bit of good news in the world to finish off the year for you, and here it is. Now, married father of 5 and granddad, Lester Harvey, was out hunting in the woods in Virginia when he and his mates spotted a bear. They decided to hunt the bear. The bear decided to hide in a tree. There's a picture of it hiding in a tree. I think it may be a different bear, but as we'll see, I don't think this lot were taking pictures. The hunters stood beneath the tree and shot the bear, because who wants a fair fight with a bear, right? The bear's corpse fell out of the tree and landed on top of Lester, who was then also quite dead. Now, on the one hand, there is a family without their dad and granddad at Christmas, and that's sad. But then again, he did pick a fight with a bear. And in the Mirror newsroom, we used to call that nature's pruning fork. Jason, is this proof that if you make the wrong decision about something, Keir Starmer, if you're listening, it won't just come back to bite you, but it might actually go splat right on top of you at some point?
Yeah. Hairs are going to fall on my head in 2025.
Yeah. Well, you know, just
I'm going to take up hunting guinea pigs, much safer.
It's an awful lot safer. I'm surprised that this big group of hunters all stood around a tree. That none of them killed each other when they were letting off the guns. Yeah. That would be what I was expecting. Obviously, had it landed on a grandma, the bear would probably have copped it, because they don't take any kind of crap off anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, everyone, for watching and engaging with us this past year. Richard says 2024 is better with the news agenda. A guarantee and a promise that it'll be even better in 2025 when all the government reviews start to land. Well, 2025 is going to be a busy year for a lot of people, I should think. And Keir Starmer's going to have to start finding some money and some political support somewhere, because he seems to be losing quite a lot of it. Thank you, everyone, for watching and engaging with us this past year. It's been a hoot, as always. Thank you to our regulars. Thank you to the trolls and those who lurk and never comment. We love all of you equally. We will be back in January. So until then, have a lovely Christmas, everybody. Don't pick a fight with a bear or a grandma. And we'll see you on the other side. Stay safe. Take care.
Happy Christmas, Susie.
And you, Jace.